Mark Adams in some hot water at Texas Tech. We have a Big 12 basketball tournament bracket. And also, we have Big 12 basketball awards. A huge day of hoops, news, notes, and odds coming your all's way on this Monday edition of Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Josh Neighbors here, the host of Locked On Big 12. I am back in Little Rock, Arkansas, back in my apartment, Studio 1A, after being on vacation. That's why we had no show on Sunday. I was still in transit. I want to thank you guys because over the weekend, we hit one of our goals, 3,500 subscribers. But our goal for this month is 3,600. So please, please, please subscribe and help us get there. But want to thank you all for helping us reach 3,500 subscribers. It's a big milestone for us, and we appreciate it and help us keep growing this thing. And as always, I appreciate the nice notes about you all, how you all found the channel, and the fact that you're subscribing has always brightened my day. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me at Josh Neighbors _ as well. And this is a really interesting show because we're leading this show today with some news about Texas Tech Red Raiders head coach Mark Adams, who has been suspended for a racially insensitive comment that he made. The school is calling it an inappropriate, unacceptable, and racially insensitive comment. According to the school, Adams was encouraging a player to be more receptive to coaching and, quote, referenced Bible verses about workers, teachers, parents, and slaves serving their masters. Adams apologized to the team after he found out the player was upset about the use of the Bible verse, a source told ESPN. Athletic director Kirby Hocutt was made aware of the incident. He issued Adams a written reprimand and then made the decision to suspend the coach, to conduct a more thorough inquiry after the suspension, obviously. And then you guys know Texas Tech finished the season up, obviously 16-15, 5-13. They're in the Big 12 tournament. Adams signed an extension last spring that runs through 26-27, would pay him $15.5 million over 5 years. If he was fired without cause, he would be owed $60 million or 60% of what's left on his contract, so $7 million. And then an additional piece of context that we got, Jeff Goodman, said that there had been an incident earlier this year involving Mark Adams. Now, that had not, ended up in any kind of suspension or issue, it looked like. But Adams, told the stadium the comments were not racist, that he was quoting from the Bible verse when he told one of his players that there is always a master and a servant. And he said that he was quoting scripture when he was talking about it. So there are a few things to tackle, with all of this kind of going on right now. And, I think that everybody kind of has like a different view, in terms of like, where is this information coming from? Is it being purposefully leaked? Is there a point to this? And I know, because I know there's been some consideration about that. Are they trying to get out of the contract? Is that what's happening here? And so I'll just say, look, guys, like the bottom line about this is what he did was completely wrong. He cannot be, any coach cannot be referencing slaves and masters as a way to try and teach a kid. And I'll say this as somebody that I'm not a teacher, but when I was at the University of Missouri, I was the head of the student radio station, and big whoop, whatever. But that involved training kids on how to be on air, how to call games, how to prepare, how to use equipment, all of that stuff. And if you've ever taught anybody, if you're a parent, whatever, you can teach stuff the wrong way. That happens. And, it might result in some kind of a failure from the subject of the teaching. Maybe sometimes you're too stern, whatever it is, but this is not how you do it. And also, once again, it's bad because, implying that there can be a servant-master relationship there is outdated, awful, and, it is racist, to a point. Also too, like what kind of message is that? Like, that is not a modern message. It's not any kind of context. Like, somebody is your coach, sure, but they're supposed to be like helping you, learn things and grow. And how is that person going to help you learn and grow if it's that kind of relationship? It's not even like a parent relationship, And look, some people are strict. That is how it is. But this is not even close to being involved in that kind of conversation. It's just outright wrong to do. As for Adams' future, if it were in question before, it's now even more in question. And I think some of the other stuff that I've been seeing too is some questions being raised now about Kirby Hocutt and some of the stuff, that Kirby Hocutt has been doing just hiring wise. Now for some reason I cannot access this article, which is very, very frustrating. It just popped up on my feed. It came from from Sportico. And it is about, Kirby Hocutt now faces 5th alleged coaching abuse scandal in Lubbock. At what point does this track record cost an athletic director their job? I think it's an interesting point here because I think people like Kirby Hocutt. I think he is a good athletic director. I think he has hired coaches who generate a lot of enthusiasm. The problem is those coaches, while some of them have been very, very successful, some of those coaches have had, some run-ins now with some sticky situations. I can't recall all 5, but obviously the Chris Beard and the Mark Adams situations now, bring to light maybe an alarming trend that's happening there. And look, I am not on this show trying to pretend to be a Texas Tech expert. I have not. I feel like so far in the first 6 minutes and 20 some seconds of the show have not put off that vibe. I know a lot of you Tech fans watch the show. I appreciate you guys. You guys are a diehard, awesome fan base. And, I would talk to our guy, Chris Level, who does Locked On Red Raiders. The problem is, it's going to be tough for Chris to speak on. It's going to be very, very difficult for Chris to speak on the situation because obviously he knows Mark Adams. He is, involved with the basketball broadcasts. And so while, you want, Chris to be critical, it could be hard just because he's so close to the situation. So I'll reach out to Chris, and when he feels comfortable talking about it at some point in time, we'll have him on. But there's still so much that has to be sorted out. As for the short term, guys, clearly this is bad. I think it could be grounds for firing, especially Jeff Goodman saying there's some kind of incident that happened earlier along the lines. So to me, y'all, I think it's kind of heading a certain direction right now for Mark Adams at Texas Tech. And I think there would be a lot of folks, who'd be surprised if we saw Mark Adams coach another game at Texas Tech, considering how the season went down, considering this situation as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of guys, hop in the portal. But I felt like they were playing like a top 25 team towards the back end of the season. Obviously now a lot of that momentum has been lost. Whether it be on the court, off the court, everything in between, a lot of that situation has been lost. So let's get to the awards that we got. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's Locked On Big 12 podcast is brought to you all by the folks at Built Bar. Go to built.com today. Or now, what is available, you guys can go to Sam's Club and Walmart. At Walmart, they have the 4-pack. At Sam's Club, they have the Baker's Dozen, the 13-pack that you guys can find right now. They got different flavors. Once again, Built Bars are good, and they're good for you. They're covered in 100% chocolate as well, which makes them, obviously very, very delicious. So once again, built.com today, Walmart, or you guys can go to Sam's Club as well. All right. So the next thing we have to get to, Big 12 awards came out after the end of the season. Let's start with Conference Player of the Year. We had Jalen Wilson from Kansas. I don't think there was too much of an argument on this one. DeJuan Harris, Defensive Player of the Year. Newcomer of the Year, Keontae Johnson. Freshman of the Year, Keontae George. Sixth Man Award goes to Serge Bari Rice. Most Improved Player, KJ Adams. Coach of the Year, Jerome Tang. So there are very interesting, a lot of different ways you could go with a lot of this, but I think a lot of these are correct. Jalen Wilson definitely is Player of the Year. I think there is no doubt about what, everybody's coming from that one. DeJuan Harris is one of the best perimeter guards in the conference. Conference Newcomer of the Year is pretty easy. It's Keontae Johnson. And just what a year he had at K-State. Freshman of the Year, Keontae George, a professional scorer at the age of 18/19. I'm not sure if he's 19 yet. Serge Bari Rice, just no player had a bigger impact off the bench, like swinging important games, leading his team in scoring on those days where, you saw a Marcus Carr struggle. That was huge. And Coach of the Year, Jerome Tang. I think with all of these, like when I go down the list of all these awards, the one I think people were kind of fighting about might have been KJ Adams. think there was some conversation maybe about who the most improved player is, right? I mean, there's some guys you could argue about, like maybe a Caleb Boone, right? How good he or how well he played this season. Maybe a Gabe Kalsher. I don't know, but I think that they got that right because KJ Adams now was forced into a new role, which a lot of guys are in college, but forced into a new role. And I thought he thrived. I mean, I thought he was really good as that kind of, rim running is the kind of, I think, the right way, but just because, but also he stops short of it a whole lot. And I actually think that sometimes he's more effective, but really a smart, thoughtful player, I think, who understands who he is, what his game is, and how best to impact his team in a positive way. So I think KJ Adams is a good shout on that perspective. And I think I saw somebody say Marquise Noel, but I thought he was good before, right? So I thought that was interesting that somebody might think he'd be a good guy, but I don't really see that because I think he was good before. Let's go with now coach of the year. So we said it was a 3-horse race. Said it was Jerome Tang. We said it was obviously Bill Self in there as well, and then Rodney Terry at Texas. And I think for where Kansas State started the year, they finished at 11-7. They're going to get the 3 seed in the Big 12 tournament. For where they were projected to go, where they finished, this is a phenomenal season for Jerome Tang. He is so deserving of this. And honestly, I'm kind of upset because we didn't see it coming, right? We did not see this coming, the fact that that they would be this good, or he would be this good of a coach, which really should have, just considering like how long he was an assistant in this league for. The guy knows the league well. And so, I know he's got 2 really good players now, but think about when he starts recruiting really, really well and getting all the guys he wants to in there, and guys continue to see the success. Success, I think, will breed success in the case of Jerome Tang. So first year as the head coach, Big 12 coach of the year, could not be happier for him. And I think it went to the right person. There's no doubt, I think, about that situation. All right, so that leads us now to the 2023 all first team. First team, Adam Flagler, Jalen Wilson, Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, and Marcus Carr. So I think some people thought that Keontae George should be on the list, but you guys forgot this is voted on by the coaches. So they don't watch all the time, so it's kind of what they see. And they've seen Adam Flagler for years. So his performance plus them knowing how good of a player he is, I think ends up with him on this list. Jalen Wilson, obviously player of the year, is going to be on there. Keontae Johnson, there's no more efficient player. And then Marquise Noel and Marcus Carr getting on the list too. I think there's some conversation maybe about a Keontae George or a Grady Dick being on there. And I think this is the right group. It's funny though now, you want to call Keontae Johnson really the only real forward. Jalen Wilson, to me, because he rebounds the ball really well, great. But he is functionally a guard. I mean, he is functionally, in my opinion, a guard. You might list him as a forward because of his size, but he plays a guard to me. So, there's really no big men in consideration. And on the other hand, the other Keontae Johnson, is an inside out guy. He does a little bit of both. And I think he is, I think I would call him a forward. I've said this a whole lot, but his game in college actually reminds me of Grant Williams' game in college. Now, he is more athletic than Grant Williams is, but Keontae Johnson is a little bit of scoring around the rim, a little bit of driving, a little bit of 3-point shooting. I mean, he's got the whole bag. So I think Keontae Johnson right there too is why, I think that's he's kind of the centerpiece almost of this team. Everything's kind of built around if you were to make this an actual basketball team. Second team all Big 12, Keontae George, Gabe Kalsher, Grady Dick, Damian Ball, and Mike Miles Jr. Interesting that Damian Ball got the nod over an LJ Cryer, who's in the third team. It's Cryer, McCullough, Boone, Rice, Stevenson on the third team. There are actually no big men. There really are no big men on this team. I mean, the second team is all guards. And then there's one forward, Caleb Boone, who, does a little bit of both too. That's another guy where it's kind of odd to just categorize him there, but he's right there as well. So I think this is, it's funny, the way basketball has changed now, just so guard oriented, so guard heavy. That's why you're seeing the composition of the teams where they are. I don't have a whole lot of arguments, maybe an LJ Cryer up for a Damian Ball, but I also think it's interesting because Mike Miles gets second team. To me, if we've played enough games for him to qualify, I wouldn't have a problem with him on the first team. I think is kind of something I feel. Maybe you all disagree, But if you play enough games to qualify for any of the teams, then put him on the team you think is best. Second team to me is like a compromise of like he missed 7. Was it 7 games? Was that what he missed? Or like it might have been 4 or 5. Whatever he missed in conference play, obviously. It might have felt like 7. But, he missed a decent portion of conference play. But it's good enough to be on a team. Like, put him first team. I mean, I would rather have him over like a Marcus Carr, to be honest. Just I think the playmaking is a little bit better there. I just like him as overall player better. But sure, I mean, also Marcus Carr's team finished second in the league. So I guess that's why you put him on that list. But I think that's pretty interesting. And then now we've got the Big 12 basketball tournament that we, head to in Kansas City. And there's a whole lot going on, obviously, with seeding right now. Joe Lunardi's got Kansas as the number 1 overall seed. I think regardless of what happens to them coming up in Kansas City, that team's a 1 seed. I think there's no doubt about that. Regular season champions. And then you kind of look down the list. All right, if Texas makes a big run and wins this thing, could they get in? Maybe as a 1. Could Baylor or could Texas, Baylor, K-State, like how much can those schools really improve their standing? I think it's a big question. I'm excited though, because it's my favorite part, and I'm pulling this up now, the conference tournament odds. And the Big 12, it's just a crowded field right now. KU's plus 250, Texas plus 300, Baylor plus 450, TCU plus 600, K-State plus 850, Iowa State is plus 1,000, Texas Tech is plus 3,000, West Virginia is plus 1,800, and then Oklahoma State's plus 4,500. Oklahoma is plus 4,500 as well. World's most confusing team is Oklahoma, obviously. I think that is one way that we all feel about how, their season has gone down. You never know if they're going to smack somebody. You never know if they're going to get a big win. It's pretty much hard to tell with OU. Their 5 conference wins are like pretty resounding conference wins. But think about teams that have the most work to do. West Virginia is pretty much safe now. Texas Tech has dissipated really from the bubble. Now at 16-15, obviously you're spiraling. So the one team on the bubble that's got a chance to play their way in is Oklahoma State. Right now, Joe Lunardi has them as a first 4 out. I believe Jerry Palm has them somewhere in the bubble as well. And so Oklahoma State now with the opportunity to get themselves into the NCAA tournament, I think is something that we're obviously going to be keeping an eye on. And then you kind of ask yourself, okay, what does Oklahoma State have to do to get in the tournament? Now, in some folks' eyes in the committee, they might already be there. Sure. I don't think that is the case, but they've got OU in the first conference tournament game. And so you're wondering, all right, well, how much does that game really benefit Oklahoma State? And the tough part for them is it'd be a 3rd straight win. Like you almost wish for Oklahoma State's sake, they were playing a West Virginia to help themselves out more, just the optics of beating a team already in the tournament, but not going to get that opportunity. Now, you get that season sweep, you get to 18-14 on the year. That would actually be and they don't count this, but a 9th win in conference. Like talking about 9 Big 12 wins, we have to give them a lot of credit. Now, 3 of those would be at last place OU. Sure. Yes. But still, you're talking about a team that's, got wins, against Iowa State on the road at Hilton Coliseum. They've got to win against TCU. They got to win early in the year. They swept Iowa State actually too. Forget about that. West Virginia, they got quality wins over schools like Wichita State from early in the non-conference season too. So like they've built up, I think, enough equity kind of with some of their performances for me to say, and also a sweep of OU is still a sweep of Big 12 team. And that's a team also that's putting in good wins. So it gets them closer, but really if you are Oklahoma State, you think that most likely you need 2 wins to feel really, really good about where you are heading for March. Also across this bracket, stuff that I find interesting. That West Virginia Tech game is pretty interesting, but the second day we already know 2 matchups. Baylor, Iowa State is 1. Baylor's a 4, Iowa State's a 5. KU is number 1. They'll play the winner of West Virginia and Texas Tech. All West Virginia can do now is improve or lose some seeding with a win or a loss to Tech. No, Texas, the 2 seed, they'll get the winner of Oklahoma State and OU. Kansas State and TCU in the 3-6 matchup. I don't like either of those teams to win the Big 12 because I think that game is going to be a war that night. That is two really even basketball teams that are going to meet up in that game. Two teams fighting for more seeding. I know TCU, they want to get higher up the seed line because they feel like they should be better than where they are right now, which I totally agree with. So I think that game is going to be really interesting. And I think, we'll see who comes out of OU and Oklahoma State, but it's kind of the rest versus rust argument. I do think this game, though, is super interesting, the TCU K-State game, just because of how good I think both those teams are and where it puts them and where they're both trying to get. Like, I think both those teams think of themselves as potential Elite Eight teams. I think they both want to make it out of the first weekend for sure. It would be disappointing if they didn't. But TCU, we saw that high point. They just haven't really reached that consistently. It feels like yet to this point, since Mike Miles has come back, and they're dealing with Eddie Lampkin and whatnot, the injury with Eddie Lampkin. So that's pretty huge. But K-State too, like they really had a turnaround here towards the back end. Now, I know it's not been perfect. I know they lost obviously recently to West Virginia, which was not not great, but they ripped off those 4 straight wins, Iowa State, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and OU to get them feeling pretty good. Now they have TCU after their loss the other day. So if I'm going to pick one team, if I'm going to pick one team that's out of the top 3, I would pick Texas, honestly, to win this conference tournament. I just like them on that side of the bracket more. They have beaten, obviously K-State beat them, but they have beaten K-State. I think they beat TCU as well. I want to say they did. I'm not sure if it was with Mike Miles. I think with Mike Miles or not. Let's see. There's a second Texas game. Yeah, Texas beat them by 4. So I like their chances in that one to get to the championship game, and then rematching against obviously both teams they have beaten. They beat Texas. They beat Baylor rather, and they have beaten KU. Obviously, the other teams have beaten them as well. So I think Texas is a good bet because I like their side of the bracket more. You don't have to run into a defensive slugfest against Iowa State, and Baylor also, I think they'll be feeling some revenge on their minds for that last game against KU and how that one went. So I'm really fascinated. But Baylor, you never know what you're going to get. Obviously, the Iowa State game last week was a complete disaster. It'll be interesting to see that rematch. Is there any mental kind of, anything mentally left for them there, kind of remnants of that matchup. So we'll see. All right, that will do it for today's show. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at LO Big 12. You guys can find me at @JoshNeighbors_. Coming up on tomorrow's show, Mike Luke of Locked On Wildcats, talking all things Arizona, the Big 12. I think that's going to be an interesting conversation knowing the news that we have. More realignment news coming as well. Make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.